Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Things I Wish I Knew About. And today we're going way back, playback in Stacey's life with a very old friend from time, Marie, who is not Koshan anymore, I guess. You're Hooper now.
No,
Doctor. Are you a doctor already?
I am now,
Oh my
yeah.
God. Dr. Marie Hooper.
I think we started that at the
In nine,
beginning.
if you had asked me in 1997 if I was going to ever say Dr. Marie, it would have been a hard no. It would have been a hard no. What is your title? You are a clinical psychologist?
So I'm a clinical child psychologist, but I'm in the last year right before I'm sort of autonomous. So I'm under my supervised practice.
And today we're going to talk about all kind of things mental health, but related to children. I had a mental health advocate, talker, speaker, whatnot. We focused on adult, but
Mhm.
today
Mm.
we're going to talk about kids and their brains and all the
Favorite thing to
things that,
talk about.
man, things I wish I knew before having kids, but things I wish I knew about a kid's mental health. So Marie, let me preamble. So Marie and I know each other because in 1997, we both got hired at Cedar Brae Loblaws back in the day. Marie's mom, hers was nepotism because her mom was a manager. So I had to apply and do all the things. Did you work at a store before Cedar Brae?
I did.
Which one?
Age of Court Loblaws at Age of Court Mall.
Man. And we both worked in the deli. And Marie and I specifically worked the Christmas midnight to 8 a.m. deli tray
Oh
shift.
God.
That's not even a thing anymore, but you could order, and people did party trays, sandwich trays, veggie trays, fruit trays, meat trays, and we would come in for 8 hours and make trays and
Oh,
eat probably as much as we made. I ate, oh my God, the whole time. The whole time. Because there was
I mean,
nobody in the store. We'd just go to the bakery, get a bun, make it a
no,
sandwich tray, make one for myself.
just a little bit for you, a little bit for me.
Yeah.
It was good times. I felt like that was like good bonding time. And
It was
it was always the buzz of like the holidays, right? And it
Yeah.
was yeah, we were in a good mood back then.
It was
That's
yeah.
just to interrupt you and say I think that's maybe when I started my PhD. It took me that long to finally
Probably. It's probably. So tell people what kinda how you started in this field because you went where did you go to school after high school?
I went to York University, and then so I did my undergrad in psychology, then I did my master's in psychology at York, and then I did my PhD in psychology at York.
And so have you been this whole time not full time this whole time, has it been?
Yeah, no, I mean, I worked, for some years in between when when you and I knew each other back in the day,
Yeah.
have switched careers several times.
I was trying to think, I don't even know what you did before
Yeah,
you
no,
did
I've
this.
done, like, marketing, did a lot of marketing, bartended, what else did I do?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I did, like, all kinds of, like, promo stuff, but really, I would always go back to doing all the summer camp stuff every year.
Yeah.
I worked at special needs camps from when I was, like, 14, and something just kept bringing me back
So you
to
were
it.
drawn right away to the kid aspect. So when you went into psychology, you're like, "I think I'm gonna end up focused on kids."
Yeah, and I mean, the program that I was in, was a child developmental stream, so I was
Mhm.
focused on children, and it was very specific to apply. So while I do see adults in practice, my degree is in clinical developmental, so lifespan, but I really focus on up to 18, and then I, assess women and do therapy with women and trans folks, but, that's under supervision.
The whole gamut.
Mhm.
And when you're done supervision and they're like, "Be free, this is your thing," will you focus specifically on kids, do you think?
I think I'm gonna go back for what they call, like, a retraining plan
You're
because
gonna go back to school, yeah, yeah. Why wouldn't you go back to school?
the first thing I said to my husband, who, as you know, we call Hooper,
Yep.
who
I
loves
love
maybe
Hooper.
you more than he loves me, he said, "Say hi to Stacey for me this morning," and I was like, "Don't worry, I will." He said, "Do you think maybe I could go back to school for something?" Because I said, "I think I'm gonna do psychiatry. I'm gonna go back." He's
Was
like,
he
"I won't
joking?
divorce you if you go back to school." And so, I mean, it's like it's his turn. He's so selfish.
Honestly, it's only been like 14 years for you.
I know. Well, the program basically like kicked me out. They were like, it's time. It's time. It's time for you to go.
Yeah. Give us
Yeah.
a thesis.
Yeah.
It could be
Get their
20
things right.
minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
No,
get out.
like they were just kicking me out.
And now you have opened your own very successful is it called a practice?
Yeah. Private, multidisciplinary practice. Yeah.
Oh man, very fancy. If you guys
Uh,
can't see because you're not watching on YouTube, she even has a branded mug, guys. She doesn't mess around. All
this
the
is,
things. It's called Flourish. Did you
it
come up with that
is.
name?
Yeah, I did. Branding concept. I think actually might have been Sarah, my sister, who helped with that prior to her involvement in the clinic. Poor thing now um, has more stake than she ever. I have to tell you this because you know my sister,
We
and
also work together at Loblaws.
that this is true. This is true. She said, Marie, when I start doing stuff at Flourish, like, I just want to do the socials. No, I don't really want to manage the people. And her literal main job is managing.
Managing the people. Man, that's a rough career if you
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't sign on for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So she does all the things, but Flourish was her name, and I stole it. And I said, yeah, this is what we're doing.
That's a
And so
great name.
Flourish is, yeah, we're a pretty big practice now, 48 clinicians.
Oh my God.
Staff, not clinicians, and we had one unit in the building, and now we have three. And we see
Crazy.
about 3,000 kids a year.
Oh my goodness. Okay,
Mhm.
so let's talk about kids. So I'm a new parent. Let's say I'm a new parent and I'm like, man, I think I need support. Like something's going on. Parenting is rough regardless. Parenting is rough regardless. You're going to need
Not for the
support.
weak.
Yeah, no, it is not for the weak. Things I wish I That's why I started that whole series. Things I wish I knew about having kids before I had kids, man, because I didn't know anything. But parents might feel like they need a little bit of support in whatever aspect. What are some kind of like early signs that parents most often present to you? They're like, "Hey, I think we need to come in to talk to somebody. Here's what's up." What ages do you work with first of all? Like where do you kind of seeing kids?
So I can do an autism assessment for as young as 18 months.
Oh, wow.
I mostly focus my practice on assessment of autism. That's
Mm,
really the love of my life. That's where I spend a lot of my time. So for an 18-month-old who comes in, it would have to be pretty pervasive
right.
presentation. But yeah, I can assess autism as young as 18 months. And usually the first sort of signs of like someone who may be a little bit concerned is separation anxiety. That often comes up pretty early. Age 3, parents will say, oh, we're worried about the daycare, we're worried about school, language delays, right? So
Mm.
speech, that comes up quite a bit. And the big one and my favorite, sleep issues,
Oh my
right?
God. I feel like you're describing my child though, first of all, right? Like legit, like he was a terrible sleeper. He legit had language delays. It was over COVID,
Yep.
like there was a lot of
Yep.
factors involved. But I was online Googling, I'm like, what is the checklist?
Yep.
What is the 18-month checklist? What's wrong? And that's, I
Yep.
think, too, parents are not panic, but you're very aware of just, I want everything to be cool. I want everything to be kosher. Is this wrong? Like my sister, we laugh all the time now. When one of her twins was born, he was like a week old, and she called
Mhm.
me. She's like, "I think he has Down syndrome," and I'm like, I don't think so. Why do you think that?" And she's like, "He's sticking his tongue out." Like he's like, "Mm," and she's
Right.
like, "That's it." That's it. He's got Down syndrome. But like we panic, right? Like, and we start Googling all of the things. But I think maybe people need to kind of figure it out and then seek professional to
Yeah.
alleviate maybe some of those concerns.
Yeah. And I think that's, new parent, right? Like,
Yeah,
especially your first. I
for sure.
remember with Sloan, with my daughter, who's now, 11 going on 25, she didn't go to the bathroom for 4 hours and I had her in emergency at Sick Kids. Like,
Right? But you don't know when it's your first, for
right?
sure.
You're just like, and I'm in the field, like something's wrong.
For
Hey,
sure.
mom, here's a sleeping pill to help you tonight. And no, we get lots of calls like that where parents
Yeah.
are, really, really anxious. But, we try not to stress too early. But first kids are usually the ones that,
Yeah.
parents lose sleep over.
Right. So then when we start to get a little bit older, I would assume if they're younger, like 18 months, it's a lot of physical kind of presentation, like maybe there's no eye contact, that kind of stuff. And then when we start to get to school age, parents would come to you, I would assume if kids are maybe socially, it's kind of an issue. Is that when they might come to you and say, this is what's happening?
Yeah, or a daycare teacher or a
Mm,
school teacher has noticed some concerns. And really where we start seeing this is when there's externalizing behavior. So for example, a kid might be having difficulty communicating, so they're biting or they're
right.
pushing or they're having trouble with entry to play kind of skills.
Right.
And so that's where we start to get, or the impulsivity, can't sit on the carpet. Johnny's running around the classroom when, everyone's sitting for circle time.
For
So it's
sure.
like that external sort of behavior that we see that then, parents have more questions about. And then teachers will often like, can we talk for a moment?
Yeah.
And, make recommendations to get a child assessed or at least to say a therapist and
Mhm.
go from there. Yeah.
So when kids come to you for an assessment, let's say, and there's, I don't know, let's just say there's something that comes up. Maybe if they're younger, maybe it's ADHD, maybe there's some kind of learning delay or
Yep.
whatnot. I am in the school system with a child who has an IEP, and it can be difficult to get support, right? It's a very overloaded system. It is public education, and a lot of the time, I mean, I've found with mine, if kids are not violent, if they're not a super big problem, it's like they fall through the cracks, right? There's very clearly things that need to happen, but it's not enough of an issue to get support in the class,
Yeah.
which
Happens
I'm sure you
all the
see
time,
all the time, which is
right?
when maybe kids might or parents might seek your help. Is that kind of what you find?
Yeah, yeah. So parents are either forced to sort of pay privately and get an assessment or, seek support because, the hospital wait lists are very long if they're going
Mhm.
to try and do it through the hospital system. But, the school board, they have to make choices about who needs it the most,
Yeah.
or your child's not behind enough, or we're going to
Yeah.
prioritize another child. And so that's when we start seeing families who either have been advocating for their child and they're just not up on that list, not
Mhm.
high enough on that list, or someone has been very frank with them, that just we're at cap and we can't do this assessment.
So if somebody comes to you, you do the assessment, you find whatever designation it is. Is it your practice that you kind of put things in place? Like how would you support the parents from that? What are some kind of support systems that might be helpful for parents?
So that's a really good question. So in our reports, when we're done the assessment, we're saying share this report with your doctor,
Sure.
share this report with the school, depending on the age of the child, depending on the diagnosis, if there was one that was made. Sometimes, like ADHD in the Toronto District School Board, for example, does not qualify as an exceptionality.
Listen, it does in my house, Marie. It does in my house.
Well,
Christ.
I know. And this is it, right? It's like, we're not going to give you an IEP. We're going to give you what's called an ILP, which is sort of the informal document that often parents will get if a child is under the age under 3.
Okay.
It's getting harder and harder to get IEPs. It's getting
Is
harder.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. The TDSB here has a rule that and I know you're in Durham, but the TDSB has a rule that if you're under grade 3, you need superintendent permission to have an IEP.
God, come
Unless you
on.
have, I think, an autism or an intellectual developmental disorder, so an intellectual disability. So you need special permission from the superintendent. And then, it's fine if you have a good teacher who really
Sure.
understands your kid. But often by the time kids are getting to us, many of them don't like school anymore,
For
right? They've
sure.
been told to sit down, stop doing that. They're
Mhm.
presenting more behavioral, and I'm using my air
Totally.
quotes. So, kids have already had a negative experience with school at that point
Yeah.
because they've been told what to do all day long. And so when parents are, back to your question, because, we can go on tangents, but when we're writing up those reports, the idea is, it's very scripted. Teacher, do this first, then this, then this. And then, but we often get that pushback of like, we don't have the resources to do
For
this.
sure. Yeah.
So it puts a lot of pressure on parents to have to really advocate and like, they're asking for meetings and like we're all in this together, right? Teachers know they're under-resourced, underfunded, so yeah, it can be tricky, but my job is to make those recommendations to the school, to the parent, and any additional support, like maybe this child needs occupational therapy or speech or whatever.
Right. I was gonna talk about other stuff, but I wanna talk about ADHD now because that's my life. I want
Great.
I wanna kinda talk about, I mean, here's the thing, I know I'm making fun because it's my life, but I think it is so prevalent, truly, like, everybody I talk to, and I know it's this huge kind of umbrella of, we all joke ADHD. Bill and I, my ex-husband and I, who Marie also worked with, we always joke and we're like, "This is you. It's you. This one's you." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's clearly you. It's both of us. It's both of us. But I think it really is a huge kind of thing. So someone comes to you, you're like, your child's presenting with ADHD. This is kind of whatever. Here are I would love some support help at home. What can parents do at home to put supports in place?
Is this a consult? Are we
Yeah.
doing a
Could you let me
consult?
know? I'll
Yeah.
tell you what I know already. No.
Okay.
Yes, it is a consult. But this is a real thing because I think parents can get, I mean, it's very frustrating, obviously, to repeat yourself consistently and to not understand that it's not intentional, that this is a real struggle.
Yeah.
But maybe there are little things like I look up different doctors on ADHD all the time. And I've found one that like physical touch while saying a direction can be very helpful
Very helpful. Yeah.
for someone. If I make the contact and say, hey, look at me, this is what I need, you know, that makes a big difference. Something like physical touch can make a big difference.
Yeah.
But I'm not a doctor, Marie. Are there other things that I don't know?
Well, so I always tell parents because often, like I said, they come to us and often they're in burnout or there's been a lot
Yeah.
of like a bit of turmoil in the house, behaviors and things like that. I think one thing is to really always try to remember is kids do well if they can, right? Ross Green, huge. I'm a lover of Ross Green. And he said that. He said, kids do well if they can. And so trying to always take that perspective of like, my child is really struggling right now, but they're trying their best. And
Mhm.
in the moment when I'm like really, really irritated with my
Sure.
kid who's, just like smashed my TV or whatever, grounding myself and reminding myself of that. But like you're saying about the touch and all of that, I think knowing what type of presentation this child has is important because there's 3 different types of ADHD.
Tell me.
Yeah, so when you and I mean, you're older than me, so
Oh my
maybe
God, guys, I'm like, I'm 9 months older. She used to use my fake ID
I
for
I
1 year.
I was Stacey Green,
She
back
was.
I was
You
in
were.
for 1 year, yeah, January 26, 1980, never
You got
forget
it.
it,
That's
and, I just don't remember your postal code, I had to present that as
me
your
neither. Me
yeah.
neither.
So
I'm so much
there
older. So back in my day,
back in your day, I don't know what they called it, but it used to be ADD, inattentive
ADD.
presentation. So it's ADHD, attentive presentation, and that's kind of like that, as one of my clients calls it, she's so funny. She said, Marie, I feel like I'm flitting with the fairies when I'm in class. She's off with the fairies. She's the kid who's, in the baseball field with the dandelions. Just
Right.
la la la, right? That care like that, dreaminess, preoccupation, being making careless mistakes. This was a big one for me as a kid. Like skip questions on tests and things like that. And then you have the more like then you have the ADHD hyperactive impulsive presentation,
Yeah.
which is the one that's very recognizable, right? Yeah. Those kids when we were in school, the ones that were always standing up and walking the halls, right?
Yep.
And so it's just easier to recognize because they're up, they're down, they're restless, they're fidgeting, they're having a hard time regulating.
I do have one of those.
Yeah, always on the go, driven by a motor. Those are some of
Just
yeah, just zoom, zoom,
pacing. We
right?
talk and he paces.
Yeah.
But
And if
I think that's how he regulates, right? Like I think it's just what he needs.
Well, it's the movement, right? Like
Yeah.
that's really helpful. And so, to your question about like what parents can do, like I have
Mhm.
so many parents that have trampolines in their basements or have like one amazing parent who like built a wall, like one of those climbing walls, like that need to like get that energy out. But part of that presentation is also impulsivity, hyperactive impulsivity. So difficulty waiting your turn, constantly interrupting, which I do constantly as someone who is adults diagnosed at 40. And then if you're really lucky, you've got the combined presentation. You've got at least 6 of one and at least 6 of the other. So 12, minimum of 12 out of 18 of those symptoms you were rocking. And so we, it depends on the presentation, of course, and depends on the kiddo. But my goodness, visual schedules, minders, we recommend all kinds of apps for kids. One of the challenges we hear a lot are parents getting their kids out the door in the morning.
Mm.
Like
Yeah,
my
I can
daughter,
imagine for sure. That one's not so much for, I mean, again, I'm speaking for me, but that is a huge thing that I hear, right? It's just because you start, and I do it myself. Honestly, sometimes I'll call Lou. I'm like, if you came home right now, you would die. Because I've started a project here, I've started a load of laundry here, and then I see something and it's like I'd start over there, but that's kids in the morning, right? It's like put your shoes on, but then they see something and then I have to go like it's
yeah.
just constant redirection. And that
But is
can
that you or is that your kiddo?
right? Honestly, that's my little one, but he's 6, That's just, "Mommy, I'm just looking at my Lego." I'm like, "Ugh." But totally, it is it, and that's the thing, maybe we'll come back to this at the end because we're focusing on kids, but this can cause a lot of burnout, I would imagine, for parents, right? Like a lot of it gets old in the most respectful way. It gets old saying,
Yeah.
I say to my son all the time, I'm like, "If I could tattoo on my forehead, keep your hands to yourself. Keep your hands to yourself. Hey, keep your hands to yourself." Like it's so honest to God. It's frustrating, but those are some great things. That physical touch for me. I also write on a mirror in like erasable ink, a list of what to do. It's
Mhm.
helpful now with my little one because starting to learn to read, right? He's almost 7 and he can read things. So schedules and visual cues. Do you find it more helpful when kids are autonomous in the process? If it's like a checklist for them
I think
that they can do?
I think that really, I think with including kids, collaborating with kids about
Mm.
what this should look like, I find is really, really helpful. You're more likely to gonna get buy-in. My son, who, has special needs, but he loves being able to put his own check mark on
Yeah.
his. So his is like a Velcro check mark, and so he
Mm.
puts it on, and that's kind of how we get him out the door in the morning. But when kids are involved in the process
Yeah.
and collaborative, my experience and many of my clients' experience is that, but when you get that buy-in, you're more likely going to see success.
And structure as well. Do you find that helpful?
So structure, knowing the routine. If you have
Mm.
a kiddo who gets anxious about when things change,
Yeah.
we have a lot of kids, we get this too, Sunday night blues about returning to work on Monday. Monday transitions can be difficult. So keeping that structure, keeping that routine, having them part of the plan when the plan's changing and giving them a warning, but not
I
too much of a warning where it's going to get them anxious.
I need to give ample notice
Yeah.
for hey, this is normally what happens. This is what's gonna happen this time,
Yeah. And-
just to prepare ahead of time. But these are
Yeah.
all like learned strategies, right? Like this has been, and that's the kind of tricky part with your kids. You're gonna learn as you go, but I'm like almost 17 years into it, right? But the beginning is not as easy. You're gonna need to find, I think, pick and choose from these strategies, right? Cherry pick what's gonna work for you and your kids.
Yeah, what I always say in my reports, I say you're going to be overwhelmed. You paid me a lot of money to do this assessment,
Yeah.
but and you paid me to get the evidence-based sort of suggestions based on your child's, exact profile. Treat it like a buffet. Some of these things are going to work for you and you're going to throw the rest out. Because
Yeah.
I don't want them to see, 2, 3, 4 pages of recommendations and think, I've got to do all of these things.
Mhm.
One of the things I find really helpful is an app I'm recommending to kids too. It's called Goblin Tools.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's really it's like this, and I'm not endorsed. I'm not very, very cool. It breaks tasks down and it puts it back. It's not the parent telling you what to do. It's like the app has told me to do this. And so it takes a little bit of the pressure off where, when I ask, my daughter to go upstairs and get ready for bed or get ready for school, she comes down in her underwear with the cat in her arm and she's listening to Taylor Swift. And I'm like, I I just don't know what's happened here. But if you look on the app or she looks at her visual schedule, she can see, oh, this is what I needed to do.
Right.
And we're a neurosparkly family.
Right? That's what I always say. I'm like, we got to sprinkle a spectrum.
Yeah,
Just
we
got
got
a little sprinkle of
a
spectrum.
little bit of this, a little bit of that. Having a husband who has ADHD, who also diagnosed in adulthood. I mean, this whole time I said to him, you really you can only drive away with your car, with your phone and your coffee on your car
So
so
we,
many times. It's a pretty pervasive issue in our home.
man.
I had ADHD when the diagnosis came. I said, I'm actually
What?
qualified to tell you this. I don't know why we spent this money. And so our daughter,
Honestly.
had her assessment because, we wanted to do a psycho ed for her. And she said, Mom, do you think I'm going to have ADHD? I will buy you a pony if you don't. So this is
You say,
where
babe, I've been assessing you since birth. I just,
Mhm.
secretly in here. Yeah.
But
Yeah, you
Stacey,
do.
you actually just brought up like a really, I brought it up myself actually. You just reminded me.
Fuck you, Stacey.
But her teacher, was like, I don't see it.
Mm,
Her tutor was like, she definitely has ADHD traits. We see it at home. You're talking about those kids that slip between the cracks. This is why I focus so much of my practice on girls, AFAB kids, because those are the folks that are high maskers, camouflaging at school, need to do well, especially if you're bright.
right.
That's a protective factor. I can read a room and I can suppress, right? But when you get home and then
Yeah.
if you're saying, I don't see any of that, but then you have an emotional puddle on your floor because they've been holding it in all day.
Yeah. Talk to me about the safe space of home. Like, because that happens. And I don't know many parents are probably aware of it, but like the idea that at home you can be a dick, right? Like you all day has been, first tell people what masking is. What does masking mean?
Big term. So it's sort of a form of camouflaging. And if you think about being a chameleon, what it means is that the thing that you're showing on the outside is not matching my internal experience. So, in some way, I'm suppressing, I am acting differently to fit in the way a chameleon would. And we know that girls in particular are really, 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 really good at this. And when you have a less obvious presentation, autism, ADHD, can hide it. Right. And that's why we know that girls with autism in particular are getting diagnosed 2 to 3 years later than boys
Right.
because those signs are more subtle and they're showing up later.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then so kids are masking at school and maybe activities and whatnot because they're fitting in with their friends. But then parents might notice when they come home, they're reactive, they're saucy, they're all of the things because they don't have to anymore, right? There's just
They're
the
unmasking,
energy.
they're taking that off. What's so funny is, and I always, depending on my comfort level with the client, but like it's like taking your bra off when you go to get home,
Yeah.
right? Like that comfort of like I can be myself here.
Right.
And I don't have to meet this norm, this standard that society is, expecting of me. And to be honest with you, like parents the safe space, right? Where can you be who else can you be yourself in front of more than your parents?
Mm-hmm.
And also parents often are the ones who get the brunt of the dysregulation.
For sure. So what does that look like?
Depends.
Like dysregulation meaning,
Yeah, so emotional meltdowns, more likely to be irritable, snappy, just often it's exhaustion, right? If you
yeah,
think about kids that have been like holding it in all day, and
for
all
sure.
day there's like an sensory overload, classrooms and noisy and being told what to do. And if you're suppressing that, it's like it can be very, very difficult. And so for neurodivergent kids, especially, we're always recommending like recovery time,
Okay.
right?
And what would
Right.
that look like? So my kid's at home, my kid has whatever. They're at school, they've been masking all day, they're fitting in with their friends, they come home and they're just over it. They're over it and they need a minute. Is that that going to look like? Maybe a sensory away minute or
Yeah. So I am a fraud. Screen time is a big
I
thing in
knew
my.
it. I knew it. Guys, I knew it all along.
I am a fraud, and my 11-year-old I only recently had her out of my bed, and my kids watch more TV than they should. Don't listen to anything I have to say, but
Mm,
we know, neurodivergent. There's, we obviously talk so much about screen time and how bad it can be and all of these things, but in moderation, I think it's fine. Think about what you like to do when you're like wanting to just get away,
for sure.
quiet. I want to be on my iPad. I want to watch my shows, binge watch my true crime documentaries, but just giving them that space where you're not demanding anything out of them.
Yeah.
uh, and giving them that reset, not making them do homework right when they get home, right? If they've been doing that all day, they've had to perform.
Oh, that's such a tricky challenge, Marie, because I mean, I get it. I fully get it. You do not want to work all day and then come home and work again, but it turns into like the just not impulsivity, the opposite. It's like, I'll do it. I'll do it. And then to wrangle that back in.
I
But
know.
I think that might not be what to do because in my head, I think, okay, you're in this mode already, right? Like you've been working, we're in it, just get it done.
Yeah.
But no kid wants to do that. No kid wants to just carry it on once you're home. But if we take a little break, it's like a gap year of school, going back to school after your gap year. He's like, it's so free out here. But you're saying that it's ineffective.
Well, I think it depends on the kid,
I'm sure,
depends on
sure.
the dynamic, but like, I think about like my daughter when she comes home, she needs that like recovery time. She generally likes school, so I can get her back like to doing her
Right,
homework.
right.
It's always, it's the subject she doesn't like where she doesn't wanna come back to,
Yeah.
but I think it really depends. Some kids are, like, motivated, "Once I get this done, then I can, have the rest of the night." That doesn't quite work for my kiddos, but
I
I think
wish.
it
I
really
wish
dep
I was like that. To be honest, I wasn't like that either. I didn't come home and like open my books. Like,
No, I was, like, Saved by the Bell and, wanting to watch shows on the tube,
oh my
having a
God.
snack, a little snacky. That's the other thing, right? Like, good sleep hygiene, having, healthy food, having access to a snack after school, like, that's gonna help with that reset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you wish you could go back in time to high school and like shake yourself and be like,
There are
imagine
things I
how
really
successful we could be? Imagine we'd be unstoppable. I could be Oprah right now.
I think I've blocked out a lot of my high school experience, but knowing what I know now,
Right, and that's the thing with parents. It's like, I wish, and that's, you can't, right? They need to experience it themselves. It is what it is. But it's just, I think parents are so, it comes from a good place. You truly want the best for them. You like, I fucked up. Don't,
Yeah.
like, listen to me. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, I've done this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're gonna have to do it themselves. That's a whole other things I wish I knew. Things I wish I knew. You can't do it for your kids.
I think what I always come back to is like my mom and dad now that like, I do this for a living and, I've got neurodivergent kids. I'll say things like, oh, mom, they need this, this thing. And she said, this like ADHD thing, they didn't have that back in our day. Or like,
Right?
mom, you were the poster child. And I love you and I got it from you. And, love my mom, bless her. But, that question comes up a lot. Like this epidemic,
Right.
this is everyone's getting a diagnosis. Well, TikTok has helped with that quite a bit.
Yeah. Right.
But the truth is we all went undiagnosed for so long and we had to white knuckle it. I remember.
Think about your elementary school and the kids in your class who
Mhm.
now I'm like, oh my God, of course. Of course they had whatever, of
Yeah.
course they did. But at the time, they were just misbehaved,
Yeah.
right? They were the bad
I was in
kids.
the hall in the principal's office throwing chairs. I can almost guarantee, I
Yeah.
think about those kids. It's funny, when I first got my ADHD diagnosis, I posted about it on my socials. I'm pretty open about my lived experience with mental health and all of that stuff. I think I have to practice what I preach. I truly believe that. And my grade 2 teacher wrote me a private message because she's on my Facebook. No, I would never have guessed. I'm like, I was always in trouble for talking too much. What do you mean?
Right?
Like, careless work,
Look
pay
in
more.
my desk. If you look
Look at
desk
my
clean out
desk.
day, that
So
was my
it's so
shame.
cool.
That was my shame. Desk clean out day, everything, just a
And all the
mess.
cheap erasers on my pencil. Like, the signs were there, folks. The signs were there. But you
The
know what else?
education probably wasn't.
Yeah, my anxiety really also, like, masked a lot of the troubles I was having. Like, I was
Mm.
so anxious, I didn't wanna do a bad job. But man, I could have been more successful, I think, if I had the right tools.
Yeah. So
What's
talk
so
to me.
funny about I'll have to tell you one more thing, Stacey.
Tell me.
So I actually don't this is the client side of my office. So clients normally sit in this chair because I
Okay.
couldn't bear to show you
The shame.
the shame of the other side. My mom comes to drop off my kids every once in a while at the clinic, or she'll drop stuff off. She'll say, "You let clients in your office." Like, "Mom, like, I know where everything is."
They're paying me for my brain,
I know.
not for my beautiful
And I'm like,
aesthetic.
I am like modeling what this looks like.
It's true. And you're functioning. You're a functioning adult, even in a
Barely,
messy
just
space.
barely. But
Speaking of. Okay, so talk to me about anxiety. You mentioned that, and that is as prevalent as ADHD. And
mhm.
of course, there are many, many, many factors, and we don't have to get into, the causes of, because we couldn't possibly. But what are some ways maybe parents can, if they notice maybe anxiety in their child, what some of the things to maybe kind of look out for, and then ways they can mitigate or kind of help support that in their kids?
Yeah, we saw so much of this over COVID. We saw
Right.
different variants of like controlling and, lots of this data came up after COVID, but, school avoidance, not wanting to go to school, psychosomatic symptoms like I've got a headache, I've got a stomach ache, when you know that this is
Yes.
coming up a lot, difficulty eating, difficulty sleeping, asking a lot of what if questions, right? So
Mm.
anxiety in children can manifest, can look like irritability. It can look like, not sleeping, having trouble getting to sleep, waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to get back to sleep. So, these are anxieties quite prevalent, and especially in neurodivergent kids, right?
Yeah. It's funny you say that with this. My eldest used to say when he was little, he'd be like, Mommy, I have the wiggles. And forever I was like, what do you mean, buddy? Like, are you nervous? Like, he's like, I just have the wiggles. And like, 1,000%. But he didn't have the
The
vocabulary
words.
for it,
The words, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have the words, right? And so it's like, irritability, stomach aches, headaches, not feeling safe. Separation anxiety is a big one, for younger kids, right? Not wanting to leave their parent or worrying something bad is going to happen to them. Anxiety is good for us. It's a protective factor, right? Like it is good for us. It gets us going. It makes me study for that test that I'm going to have. The challenge is if all I can think about is that test. And then
Right.
I can't sleep because of that test. And I've written the test and now I'm freaking out because I'm not sure how I did on that test. In moderation, anxiety is good for us because it helps motivates us to do things. It's when it's pervasive and it's impacting or the true definition of like a diagnosis is significantly impairing a person. So if you're not doing all the things you used to do, that's when you want to, maybe seek help, or you can't think about anything else, or you're ruminating a lot. And, in children, it's what if mom, what if this happens? Like that kind of stuff, like the way that they can't conceptualize it, they can't say it, but that's in physical symptoms, but also in words and lots of questions.
Yeah. More than the mummy, who would win? A
Yeah.
rhinoceros or a megalodon? And I'm like, bro, on land or in water, which is I can't answer that question. Different questions.
And like one third of like this, we really start when kids are starting to like refuse school, not wanting to go to school. One third of kids in Ontario, or one third of families, have said that they've had kids who have missed school due to anxiety. It's a pretty
Oh,
high
for
stat.
sure.
Like
One in
to
th
me, that's a
but,
high
like,
stat.
it is, but like, if I'm thinking of people that I know, I could name easily 1 in 3. So, parents are seeing their kids, they're kinda struggling with this, they come to you, you're like, "Yeah, there's some." Would you get diagnosed? I guess you could get diagnosed with anxiety disorder or panic disorder, that could be a diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, you could get that from a psychologist. We could do that. But psychiatrists do that, family doctors do that. If it's a psychologist doing it, there's quite a bit of interviewing and questionnaires and all of
Right.
those things. But in that case, it is an exceptionality at a school board. So you
Okay.
would get more time on tests. You would, be able to do a test in a different room. And so there is benefits to a diagnosis in terms of support, but we do a lot of looking into the data, and we want multiple informants to tell us that there's anxiety in more than one place.
Okay. So parents have a diagnosis or, whatever. What are kind of support things that you suggest broadly? Again, I know that this is not, we can't, it's not a
Mhm.
specific thing, but common things that kind of maybe help support kids with anxiety.
Well, I know a lot of the kids I, work with really benefit from like weighted lap, blankets and weighted
Mm.
lap sort of animals and things like that. I have a couple of kids that carry a worry rock in their pocket for when they're feeling anxious. They rub that in their pocket. Books is a very, very good way to teach children about mental health and teach children about strategies. Like at the clinic here, every single book in our waiting room has a purpose, and often it's anxiety is like the biggest one. And so it's really, really helpful for kids to see characters in books
Hmm.
kind of reflect them and when the struggles that they're having.
Like Inside Out.
Yeah. The best. And anxiety, I have all the anxiety a little bit.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
He's
So
showing the character from Inside Out, the anxiety one, because representation matters even in
yes,
mental health, probably
it's
especially in mental health.
so true. Things like deep breathing techniques, grounding exercises, the 5 4 3 2 1. That's my favorite, and the one that kids can do where no one else knows that they're pulling out that strategy.
What's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Okay. Tell me 5 things you can see right now.
My ring light, my computer, your glasses, my microphone, my dress,
4 things you can hear. No,
my
4 things
washing
you can
machine,
touch. Let's do that one. 4 things you can touch.
my chair, this leaf, this table, my drink,
3 things you can hear.
my washing machine, the fridge, and you.
2 things you can smell.
My candle that's right there, and my perfume.
1 thing you can taste.
My grape crystal light.
It's not physiologically possible to be stressed and relaxed at the exact same time. And so grounding yourself, being in a classroom when you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling anxious, kids can do this by like grounding themselves. Okay.
Okay.
And so it's just like one of those things where you're able to do as a strategy is kids don't want to be embarrassed, right?
Right.
They don't want to feel like they're different. They don't want to feel like they're othered. And so we need to give them strategies. Fidgets are also really, really helpful for when they're feeling anxious of what to do when other kids are around so they're not outed.
So is that's taking the focus from my spiraling thought into physical, tangible
Yeah, and
things around me?
just like or a body scan, like it's mindfulness, right? Like you're bringing awareness to the moment. And again, if you can't, it's not possible to be both stressed and relaxed at the same time. So if we take ourselves from being stressed to focusing and being intentional about what we're looking at and touching and feeling and hearing and bringing mindfulness to our senses, then we're taking a break from that rumination and that stress.
Well, so smart, Marie. Okay, let's go a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And now maybe we don't have a designation, but maybe there's social shit
Mm-hmm.
that is coming up. It's difficult. High school is a difficult time. Kids can be difficult to other kids. It is tricky to exist in that kind of environment. So when you see high school kids, are we kind of dealing, what are we seeing? Like a depression, I'm sure anxiety as well, but we're starting to kind of deal with mental health as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe an autism diagnosis? Would
Yeah.
that be
So
fair?
yeah, I mean, well, many of our, neurodivergent kids also, like I said, carry that co-occurring anxiety or depression or mental
Sure.
health diagnosis. But, what teens are starting to worry about, often the pressure of like thinking about going past high school.
Mm,
A lot of peer stuff as of course and kids are mean. My
yeah.
first recommendation to children, and it's very hard to do, but my first is get off those socials. No one ever went on social media and said, wow, that made me feel really good about myself. And so I'm going to do that again if I really want that ego boost, So getting off those socials, sleep hygiene. Kids have a really to sleep. Teenagers, not their
Yeah.
favorite, and they love to sleep in. Tons, same thing. Like mindfulness apps, using apps on the kids love using like apps on their phone. There's one called Calm that we like to recommend. The reminders to drink and eat. All these simple things can really, really help support mental health. But if a child's really, really struggling with anxiety or depression, then yeah, we want them seeing someone doing a round of cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy to help with that if it's quite pervasive and sort of affecting their lives. Again, anxiety is normal, feeling stressed for a
Right.
time is normal, but think having suicidal thoughts or having, being so anxious that it's affecting your physical and mental health, then
Right.
like we gotta talk to somebody.
What can parents kind of be on that? Because not all kids, unfortunately, are going to talk to their parents and be
Hmm.
like, hey, I'm feeling really anxious. I'm feeling
Hmm.
really
Yeah.
shitty today, whatever. I can't find it. What should parents kind of be on the lookout for when they think maybe this is outside of the normal, I'm worried about making the basketball team anxiety?
Yeah. Often it's withdrawal from friends and activities, sleeping more, sleeping less. Eating is a big one. I
Okay.
know when I'm stressed, I do the opposite. I like love to eat. And when I'm stressed, often kids will like decrease eating.
I'm the opposite. If I'm anxious, nothing. I
Yeah.
feel so nauseous, so sick. I don't want to eat anything,
Yeah.
but it could be either.
Yeah.
It's
No,
one
like
extreme or the other.
naps after school. I mean, we love to nap after school. I'm not trying to freak parents out, but like that, the like the lethargic, don't really want to do anything, being late for school when you have a kid who's not changing behavior, right?
Mm,
If you're late for school and you're just a kid who's late for school, then there's no cause for concern usually. But my thing is, doing things that they used to do that they either find no more pleasure in or they've withdrawn from friends or they're, spending a lot of time on socials on, obviously we know that's not great for our brains. But yeah, so those are the more overt behaviors that you can really see. Eating less, eating more, sleeping, changes in sleep, irritability. Anxiety often manifests in irritability for children.
hmm.
You can look irritable because I'm anxious. What else? I'm just trying
Around
to.
that, that's when parents should kinda start to seek help, and does that look like kinda just placing a call to you, let's say, and be like, "Hey, I don't know, something's up with my son. I'd like him to come and kinda chat with somebody." And could it maybe just stop at one? Is that kinda like someone will come in, you'll have a chat, and it's not and you're like, "Ah," like, how does
Yeah,
that work?
sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's, it's just being able to say the thing, right? Like,
Yeah,
not everyone needs a round of therapy or needs,
right.
I think I'm biased, I guess, but I think everyone should have a therapist. And I have kids who come in for maintenance checks. It's like getting your brakes changed or, excuse me, getting your brakes changed or having an oil change, right? Like they come in for a tune up, we
Yeah.
check in, and then I don't see them for a couple months. And then, when there's a breakup with the boyfriend, they come back and I'm having a few sessions with them, right?
Mhm.
The whole point is like building that relationship with me so that I, can see them through tougher times. But the whole idea is to get you out of therapy. We don't
Yeah,
want you in
yeah.
therapy, right? We want to give you some strategies, give you some tips, and then kind of get you out into the world. That's the whole goal. But so it doesn't always end up in a round of therapy. It can just be one check-in, but also
Right.
like school counselors, kids help phone, things like that. Like I make sure that my kids have kids help phone in their phone so that if I'm not the person they can talk to, it's all like kids help phone, like the most amazing stuff they're doing now, like text messages and messenger so that you don't even have to talk because this is
Right.
the way kids are communicating.
So, talk to me about parenting with mental health in mind. What does that kinda look like? And I know parents, I don't know if I'm speaking to everybody who's a parent, but, like, it can feel overwhelming, right? Like, there's a lot of I wish it could be the '80s where you're like, "You're fine." I still am that sometimes. I'm like, "You're fine." I hear a thunk. "Hey?" you're good, you know? But sometimes in terms of mental health, we need to maybe go one step past you're fine. Are you fine? Perhaps that might be a better start, Stacey.
Validation for me, validating your kid for any feeling that they're having and being grateful and thankful that they're sharing information with you, I think
Mm,
is the big one. Many of us, yeah, like either it's cultural or we're kind of old school where stiff that upper lip and you white knuckle it. We don't have to do that
right.
anymore.
Yeah.
Modeling when we've made a mistake, modeling like work-life balance, which is
Oh
so
my God.
hard to do, right? But these kids, they're watching us.
That is my life. Honestly, sometimes I don't know if it's perimenopause or it's just my life or it's ADHD and I will lose my mind. And I can't tell you how often I go into my eldest and I walk in and I'm like, listen, that was an overreaction. I am aware. The sentiment stands. I meant what I said. The delivery could have been better,
Yeah.
you know? But I think that that's important. Like my parents would never,
No,
would never.
no.
And I think that that's okay.
Yeah, modeling when you're feeling anxious, modeling when you've made a mistake.
Yeah.
That is so hard to do, walking into my 11-year-old's room and being like, "Okay, my behavior was poor. Yeah, mom, you really got upset there." Like,
Yeah.
talking about the emotion, naming the emotion. If you
Right.
know the emotion that you're having, you're more likely to be able to, to name it, to tame it is one of the sort of the more famous things that we use in therapy, but, like, name the emotion to be able to do something about the emotion.
Hmm.
So I think that being able to point that out when you've made a mistake, when you're feeling a certain feeling, and when you're sorry,
Yeah, that's a big one. I say
right?
that to my kids a lot. I say, "Can you find the feeling? Find it for me. What is triggering the
Mm,
emotion, like
mhm.
the thing?" And sometimes they can't, but even
Yeah.
having them kind of just like take a second to be introspective and be like, "Why am I so mad?" Because it may not be the thing that you think that it is, right? But I think teaching kids the language is key for them throughout adulthood, right? Self-regulation.
Well, I think one of the things that you just nailed it there, like it's actually almost never anger is not the first emotion.
Yeah.
Something, shame, guilt, something has triggered you to,
Mm.
and what you see is that reaction from being angry, but it's not usually that. It's usually another emotion that has triggered it. And so what is that? That's that we're always trying to find. But, with kids, they don't that doesn't come naturally to them being able to recognize that emotion. And so we have to model that. What does being happy feel like for you? You feel good in your stomach, you want to smile, like that, those kinds of things, emotion regulation. I saw, not evidence-based, I was watching it on Instagram, but there was a post recently that just struck me as like so profound. It's like emotion regulation is suicide prevention. Emotion regulation is like a national strategy, right? If I know how to regulate my emotion, I am going to be less road ragey.
For sure.
I'm going to be less reactive. So anyway, I was just like, yeah, of course that's true. But seeing it just like in that little text, I was like, I'm going to use that because I thought that was really, really helpful.
For sure. I say that, and I say that a lot to my eldest could give no shits about me now, but my youngest, I'm like, all your feelings are valid. The reaction isn't though.
Yep.
Like all your feelings, you can be so mad, you can be so angry, you can cry, you whatever, always valid. The
Yeah.
reaction is what we need to kind of
Yeah.
focus on.
My question is always, does the emotion match the size of the problem? Or
Hmm.
does the behavior match the size of the problem? Often the answer is no, right? Like
Yeah.
it's big
Yeah,
problem, little problem. So we do
for
that in
sure.
therapy quite a bit, size of the problem, but also, yeah, all emotions are okay. All feelings are okay.
Hmm.
All behaviors are not,
Yeah. And sometimes,
right?
listen, parents, sometimes I hear, I don't want to blow out a candle, Like it's not always they're not always into it. He does not want to blow out a candle, which is a big breath if you can't. If you've never heard that before, it's just, and sometimes he doesn't want to, and sometimes they freak out. And
Well,
that's
it's like that saying, like no one in the history of being told to calm down has ever calmed down,
right.
right? Like don't tell me to
For,
calm down or relax.
for sure.
Oh my God. Like, I'm like, yeah, you hated when your mom told you to relax. We talk about this in therapy. Yeah, I did. I really didn't like that. So, don't try to like stifle the emotion. Let the emotion be. But how you handle it is the thing that we really care about.
Is that kind of like if a child is having a tantrum, an irrational tantrum as they do, we just wait it out kind of?
So tantrum versus meltdown, two different things. Tantrum for me is an ignored sort of behavior. You didn't get what you wanted, having a tantrum, so I'm going to probably ignore that behavior. But if it's a meltdown and really a kid is dysregulated, I'm sitting with you, I'm validating, and I'm co-regulating with you.
I see. Because that's a skill they don't have quite yet.
Yeah, so I'm sitting with you. I'm not saying it's okay, you kicking
Right.
me and doing all of those things, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm safe. I'm gonna remove my body to make
Hmm.
sure it's safe, but I'm gonna sit with you. Because the feeling you're having right now is really, really hard, and I can see that. And, and you see the softness, right? Like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you understand me," that sort of thing.
What are some, we're almost out of time if you can believe it, but
Mhm.
what are some kind of quick tips that parents could maybe think about when they're trying to create a safe space for their kids? What might that look like?
Do you mean like a safe
I
physical
mean,
space?
both. Sure. It could be a physical, maybe it's a little nook that they go and,
Love the nooks. Love the
right?
corner.
We love a
Love the
nook.
calming. I love a good nook. I love a little, crafty corner, calm corner that has, a breathing ball, a Hobervin spear, one of those things that
Yep.
you pull in and out. Their favorite game, their book, music they like to listen to, breathing techniques on the wall so that they can really sort of access, at the clinic, if you're a kiddo that we're seeing for, therapy, we're giving you a calm box. And in that box, we make it together and it's got little breathing cards and it's got pictures of your family that you love. It's got like, a bunch of different, bubbles, things like that to help so that the kiddo knows that they can go to their box wherever it is and access it at any time. Because not everyone, I mean, we're in the beaches, like you don't have a backyard. You certainly don't have a room for a nook
Right. Honestly.
in your house.
And then in terms of a little bit older, we're getting into the teens. How can parents kind of foster a safe space where their kids feel comfortable to be like, hey, this is what's up, whatever.
This is a tough one because
Yeah.
this comes up a lot, especially if you weren't raised in a house that had that open dialogue.
Yeah.
Again, this is all about the modeling. For
Mhm.
me, we have a very open house. My daughter knows that she's not going to get in trouble if there's anything that she tells me. She's not going to get in trouble, but we have to be able to talk about it. And so I try to keep that conversation open and knowing that there's not anything that we can't fix.
Yeah.
And so,
We
you know,
say everything is figure outable. That's what we say.
everything is figuring.
Everything is figure outable.
Yeah, that's right. And like knowing that and kids feeling safe to be able to do that, being validated, not being shamed, I think is a big one because kids are they're going to go inward, right? They're not going to share with you how they're feeling and giving them outlets to, they're in that age where peers are the only thing that matter. They don't care about you, as you know, with an
They do.
adolescent person, right? And so giving them ways to manage their meltdown, again, helping with that, like those coping strategies, giving them, the calm cards, a little older, but also allowing them to have their phones that have these sort of strategies and reminders on their phone that they can go to, knowing what makes them feel good when they're stressed, right? Is it a blanket? Is it you going to your friend's house? Reminding them of that when they are regulated so that they know how to access it when they're not.
Yeah, I think that's a big part is addressing things when they're not in crisis, right? When they're not, because it's not going to go in the
Yeah.
same as it would when they're
Yeah,
even.
the minute you're not rational, which is what happens when you become dysregulated, it's gone. Goodbye. Like, you're not accessing, you're not going to get to me. It's not a good time to discipline me. It's not a good time to
Yeah.
teach me a lesson, you
I'd like
know?
to though. I
Yeah,
would like
I
to.
know, especially in those minutes, right? But kids,
I think modeling. I think modeling is a great takeaway for parents, maybe of elder kids. But that might look like. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that might look like something as easy as like you guys are hanging out, and I would be like, man, I had a shitty day today. I had a really rough day today. It was rough. I had whatever. Just kind of normalizing talking about. Oh, sorry, I just choked. Normalizing talking about your feelings, your emotions, what's happening, whatever,
yeah.
and then creating that space for them.
Absolutely. Naming the emotion, modeling it, validating when they do share with you, if it's a
Right.
positive or a negative emotion, and then having that open dialogue. Yeah, I had a crappy day. Yeah, like, or the other thing I really like to do, because some kids, you get home from school and they're like, how was your day? Good. Really? You were there for seven hours. What did you do? Nothing. Okay. So I like to pull out roses and thorns at dinner.
Okay.
Tell me, one rose, one thorn, one bud. Rose, one good thing that happened today. Thorn, one crappy thing that happened today. And a bud, what are you looking forward to?
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a good, like, sort of Christmas, what am I trying to say? Good, like, dinner sort of conversation to get some of those things coming up because often, again, our teens often like to shut down,
And you can go around the table and
and
everybody
everyone
talks.
gets to share, yeah, and the other thing I was just gonna say about mental health is not having your devices in the bedroom. I think that's another one that I think can really modeling for kids, like, not having your phone everyone puts it, in
I
the
really
kitchen.
like it there, Marie. I really like it beside my bed so I can watch TikToks before I go to sleep. I just
So, that's not good modeling, but I'm the same. It's hard. It's hard to break those habits and then expect our kids to do differently.
it sucks when it's your alarm too, because you physically need to get up. And I think Lou
It's
would
the
punch me in
worst.
the face. Been
Yeah.
like, "Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo." It's like, get up. Oh my God, it's so annoying. But you're absolutely right. I say that all the time. If my son in the morning is like, I had a crappy sleep, I'm like, where was your phone, babe? Like where was it? Because it's easy to wake up in the middle of the night and reach for it, and then you're screwed with the rhythms and the blue light and the la la la, all the a whole other
All the things.
podcast, but all the
The
things. But
dopamine
yeah,
hits all the over and over and over again. Yeah, I mean, and we know that it's impacting kids.
for sure. It's impacting everybody.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Kids
yeah.
as well. We just started a thing where my 6-year-old, almost 7-year-old is only allowed his iPad on the weekends. Man, is today Friday? Is tomorrow iPad day? Is tomorrow But the thing is, and I know it's terrible if you have young kids and it's listen, iPads are so helpful sometimes to just have a
Mhm,
quiet minute, you got to do your thing, la la la.
mhm, yep,
They will find other activities though,
mhm,
like we're doing a paint by numbers right now. They will find other ways to entertain themselves and to foster imagination. And sometimes that's the thing too. In my head, I had a whole thought process there. I think I thought that hands-on parenting would lessen, which it does, would lessen as my child got older, but it doesn't always. It just turns into different things, like you may need to resign yourself that you're still going to have to, if your child may be neurodivergent in any kind of way, you may still have to sit down at the dinner table and redirect that focus, like it did not stop for me. And I think that was a big lesson that I was ill prepared for.
yep. I actually don't have like, I live this, so, like, yeah, this is no, and I think are you talking about, like, the attention wanting from you, like, the connection seeking type thing?
Well, that as well, but also literally the day to day, my children are not me. They are not going to be exactly the way you do things. They are not going to go through life, go through school, do things the way that you did. And you need to be prepared to recalibrate for that and be like, this is what they need, not what I did,
Yeah.
you know? Which is tricky. That was a tricky lesson. We're still doing math, guys. I don't want to do math.
I don't even understand my daughter's math. I'm like, "Are we sure this is grade 6? Because this is feeling."
Honestly.
I was like, "I don't
But that's okay. But that's okay if your child, I think to sum up what I have learned from Dr. Marie today
Yes,
in
tell me."
general is that you ultimately know your kids, right? Like you know your kids best. You know when something's off, you know when they may need support, you understand them, right? So you can kind of see where you think they need support. You're not going to be them, but you know them so well, right?
I always say to parents, "You are the expert on your kid. You,
Yeah.
the teacher, not your doctor, not me, you. You are
For
the
sure.
expert of your kid." And having confidence and being your like you said, like, being present in the moment with your child as much as possible, but in my opinion, you know your kid best, and you know what they need
Yeah.
instinctively, but also just, like, you're their person, and hopefully you can have the gateway to being able to have open conversation, being able to validate, and we're allowed to mess up, and in fact, we should model messing up for them often,
Oh, all the time. Fail forward. That's
right?
constantly. I have signs on my house that say fail forward all the time.
Did you
You have
learn
to.
something from it? Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good. Then this is what we're here.
Yeah.
So I feel like making mistakes, again, that modeling piece of like, I messed up and I won't do it again that way. What do you think we should do differently next time?
Yeah.
Opportunities for repair too.
What does that mean?
Just like my daughter and I will have like a little spiff or whatever. Sometimes I go into my authoritarian parenting style, which I aim to be authoritative, but
Right.
sometimes I can be authoritarian, where my husband's a bit more passive. And my daughter and I are very like, so we can butt heads often. And
Mhm.
so I'm always looking for those connection seeking moments after like a
Yeah.
bit of a little fight or a little tiff to connect and repair.
Yeah. It doesn't take away from your parenting, I have found, to ask your kids. Like sometimes I'll say, help me find the language to speak to you.
Mhm.
How would you like me to say this to you? I've said this. I'm like, I need you to do this, this, and this. What is the best way for me to do that? And it's a power imbalance. It's not like whatever, like I'm still the parent, but I truly want you to be successful in this thing. So help me. There's nothing wrong with asking your kids. I
Yeah.
find.
And I think it's what I always say is like it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
My kiddo, like, when she speaks like for example with a tone, I'm like, you could have said that differently. You could have done
Right.
that differently. And she'll say to me, Mom, you could have said that differently. You could do that differently. And so I love when she's like reflecting back on me or she's like, don't therapize me. And then she brings up a strategy I like, and I'm just like, they're watching.
Yeah.
They're watching and they're learning from us. And when I see her even do like, when I talk, I'm like this. And she started to do that. Mom, I don't know what you want from me. And she like brings her hands out and I'm like, when I see my own behavior in her and I'm like, yeah, they're watching. Always.
Always.
Even when you think they're not.
For sure they are. So what's one kind of thing you would love to impart to parents?
I think I get a lot of parents in my office that feel incredibly guilty, that feel like they have messed their child up or they should have done it different, should have, would have, could have. And I always I sit here and I have the same shame and the same guilt and I'm not doing this thing right. And like, you're nailing this thing and it's hard. And we're not like, yes, parenting has evolved and, we have so much data coming at us and you should do it this way and you should do it that way. Do what works for your family. And that's fine. Like, I think we're all doing our best and do
Yeah.
what works for your family and forget what everybody else says. Cause I think women, especially, that can be very difficult. It's the shame I see in the office that always makes me think like, if you could just see how awesome you are. And it's hard to like believe it and it sounds so cliche, but the amount of parents I've had cry in this room because
Oh,
they
I'm
think that they've
sure.
messed their child up or they should have seen it earlier. It's like,
Right.
you're not a therapist. You're not a
No.
you're not supposed to know this stuff.
Yeah. But you're also there now. Like you're here now. Like you are taking the steps. You are
I
doing what
should
you're
have seen it
supposed
earlier. I should have.
to.
And it's like, no, man, like you are awesome and you are doing the best you can and the best you have. And I think I'm constantly reminding parents of that, of how lucky their kids are.
That's nice. What a message. Hey, what's the code for Black Forest Ham?
8679.
Hey, you know it is.
My pin for everything. Every single staff member knows that that's my pin for
Black
everything.
Forest Ham, guys.
Okay,
8679.
extra lean cooked ham. Do it.
What's it? Extra lean cooked
Extra
ham?
lean cooked ham.
1088.
59.
Like, what's
It's 'cause you're
1088? Is that baloney? How embarrassing.
crazy.
Guys, Marie used to eat beef tongue. People would order it once in a blue moon, and Marie would slice herself a piece. And I was like, I will throw up at my mouth right now.
Did that. That's not true.
You what? You 1,000%
I don't think I did
ate
that.
beef
I've
tongue.
Never. Are we sure this is what we're talking about?
I'm
I don't
so
know.
dead
I think
positive.
you're getting inaccuracies and false
We can
information.
never verify it, but it's true, guys. Believe me. Marie, hey, thanks for coming on my pod today.
Who
What a
knew we
time.
were going to be so like famous and doing podcasts and
Oh
all
yeah.
the things?
Look
Never
at
saw
me.
that coming, but I couldn't
No,
see much looking up there.
it's true.
Yeah.
So much taller than Marie. Guys, I hope you got some stuff from this. I hope it was helpful for you and you got some tips. Where can people find you if they are looking for support?
Flourish Health
Flourish
Services.
Health Services on
Yeah.
Queen.
On
They
Queen
can
Street.
come and check out your website. I'm sure there's tons of resources on there as well.
There's tons of things, all the things.
Amazing. Thank you for talking to us today about things I wish I knew about kids' mental health. Now you know.